look at vehicles, especially from a workshop point of view, you're looking at the revenue that you can generate from the service of a vehicle, and you're opening up a new servicing aspect to a car. Now, some workshops may take it on board. They'll do ECU resets, they'll do sensor resets on other parts of the car. But as we move away from the guy who used to service the transmission, who was the transmission specialist in the workshop, the thought of having somebody walking towards you dressed like this saying, I want to give you an update on the safety aspect of your car and what we've done for you today. The level of engagement that that's offering is something almost some workshops have never ever had the ability to offer before. Having that specialist, almost IT specialist, talking to the customers. This is what I've done for you. This is what I found. This is what we rectify. The peace of mind of that is through the roof.
Hello and thank you for joining us for Evolve TV, where we uncover the secrets of how aftermarket workshops can improve, optimise and systemise their businesses. I'm your host, Jason O, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about advanced driver assistance systems and its relevance in the modern workshop. To share this with us, we're joined by our special guests, Stuart Howe, General Manager Sales, and Neil Riley, who is the Product and After Sales Manager over at Gutmann Solutions Australia. As part of the leading Evolve workshop program by mechanic.com.au, Evolve TV helps aftermarket workshops discover how to become more connected with the marketplace, their customers, their staff, as well as other leading aftermarket workshops. Learn how to leverage digital platforms and tools as well as best business practices in order to run a more efficient and innovative automotive service and repair business. This is Evolve TV.
Welcome to the show, guys. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much, Jason. Great to be here.
Yeah.
Two on the seat as opposed to one. I've never had this.
How cool is this?
It's like camera one, camera two. I don't know where to look.
Right, Friday, let's mix it up. Let's put a challenge back to Jason.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's jump into question number one.
Yeah, sure.
ADAS. What does it mean? And what are these systems?
Okay, yeah, really good question, Jason. ADAS. It's an acronym for Advanced Driver Assistance Systems. And if we just go back a little bit, we've had driver assistance systems on vehicles for quite some time now. Yeah. If we think of anti-lock braking, for example, that's a driver assistance system. If we think of electronic stability control, again, a driver assistance system. But now the technology that's evolved and developed and also become cheaper means that we can put more technology into the vehicles and have advanced driver assistance systems. And this can be things like the windscreen cameras that we see on vehicles today that look out the front of the vehicle.
I always think they're speed cameras.
And they don't take pictures that you can see, but yeah, so the windscreen cameras on the vehicles, we have radars surrounding the vehicles now. We have radars at the front corners and rear corners. We have LiDARs, we have infrared cameras. Some vehicles, we have multiple cameras also looking at the driver and into the cabin and looking at the passenger seat to see if the passenger seat is even occupied. So there's a lot of these systems that are designed and put onto the vehicles today. And really the idea is to make travelling on the road safer. So to try and eliminate collisions, and where a collision can't be eliminated, to mitigate the damage to the driver, the passenger, and also the vehicle and pedestrians.
Okay, so he's opened the account pretty good, Stuart. Your turn. Why is ADAS becoming more, prevalent in modern vehicles?
Jason, there's a few dimensions to this, so I'll touch on two or three sort of key elements. Firstly, we've got global governments, lawmakers, road safety councils,
of course,
all sort of pushing for, we want zero fatalities, right? So this is the long game, zero fatalities, and of course, to get to this point, we need to remove the human influence, so the decision making behind the wheel, on the brake, and so forth. So this is one of the key drivers towards it. Now, we're clearly not there yet. Vehicle autonomy, Neil will talk about a little later, but we're on the road. So we are now starting to fill some of those voids with the systems that Neil just spoke about.
It's interesting because I think back to old car technology. cars never came with seatbelts.
Exactly.
Then they came with lap sash. Then they came with these. Then they came with retractors and so forth and so forth. We are moving towards a safer driving experience. But that comment you said about 0 fatalities to give us the ultimate goal, it really does let us set our sail and head in the right direction, doesn't it?
It's exactly where we want to be. So, none of us want to see road fatalities, right? So that's clear, that's a given. But on the flip side, we've also got independent bodies such as NCAP and ANCAP, who are the organisations that do the new vehicle testing.
Oh, yeah.
So these guys are effectively looking at providing the consumers with really good insight into how safe a vehicle is. That helps the decision-making process when they buy a vehicle. So is it 5-star rating? So that's pushing the car companies to go, right, we need to be 5-star, or we need to be on the journey to get 5-star, because we want the consumers to be looking at our vehicles, and ANCAP will promote that, through their mechanisms.
That benchmark is constantly rising every year on year.
Correct.
And so these extra systems are helping that benchmark get better and better.
If you don't have autonomous emergency braking, then you won't get 5-star ANCAP these days.
And further to that, Stuart, if I can, it's now the government have become involved, because autonomous emergency braking is going to be needed as defined by the Australian design rules. So it's no longer a could be nice to have, it's going to become mandatory.
And if I just go a little bit left of field here with this final comment on this question is that we live in Australia. You're both Aussies. You work for Gutmann, which is a global brand. We have a unique piece of fauna in this country that likes to hop in front of the cars. So a lot of the technology that goes into those avoidance systems, there'd be a huge component coming out of Australia with testing because of kangaroos and the need for instant reaction. Would that be a fair thing to say?
Yeah, absolutely, Jason. And I think, the environment is obviously extremely important for driving, even without assistance systems, but certainly with assistance systems as well. Whether it's, icy roads, snows a lot, extreme heat, roads like we have that are just dirt roads, so they don't have any line markings on them. So the cameras I referred to earlier, looking at the windscreen, there's no lines for them to see. Those cameras can still see wildlife, they can still see other vehicles, but the system might be limited into what it can do. So infrastructure becomes a really big part of moving towards higher levels of autonomy.
And I like what Stuart said, the 5-star rating, maintaining that and thinking we're contributing to that. That's a pretty good badge of honour to have.
Look, it is. It's fantastic to be associated with an organisation that is continually pushing the boundary to provide those systems, with the car manufacturers, and based on what governments are pushing, and providing consumers with great choices. As you touched on, as we go now and choose our next vehicle, we're looking for the autonomous emergency braking, we're looking for the lane keep assist, we're looking for the blind spot detection, because we know that's going to protect our families, right, in the long run. So, and that's probably the last dimension to this question is the consumer. The consumer will now dictate, I'm not going to buy your vehicle unless you've got these assistant systems fitted as standard or as an optional extra. So, if you don't, then as a manufacturer, you're likely to to lose part of the vote.
So, Stuart, in these circumstances with this equipment, when would you need to replace or maybe recalibrate the equipment that's in a vehicle?
Yep, really good question. So, the components that we're talking about, the cameras, the radars, the LiDARs, the ultrasonic sensors, generally very, very reliable. So they would be rare that they would fail.
The hardware.
Correct, during the life of the vehicle. So when we talk about calibrations, Neil, I might throw over to you for this one to talk about when the calibration component would be required.
The software side of things.
Yeah,
and so
correct.
forth.
Yeah, sure, Stuart. Yeah, so as Stuart said, they're extremely reliable. They're electronic. There's no moving parts. So accident damage certainly is generally where they'll become damaged, or on 4-wheel drives, perhaps if it's been for a swim in water.
Yeah.
Okay, so it can make it a bit of a more expensive swim. The calibration is generally required if a sensor has been damaged in an accident or flooded or has indeed just failed. When it's replaced, normally it will need to be calibrated.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So whether it be a LiDAR or a radar, ultrasonic sensors normally rarely need to be calibrated as such.
Yep.
But for the cameras and the radars and the lidars, once they've been replaced, generally they need to be calibrated.
But yeah, it kind of goes back to things like, airbags, brake pads, tyres, control arms. When you change a control arm or a ball joint, you get a wheel alignment.
Yep, correct.
So it's kind of old is new again, if that makes sense.
It does, Jason. And I think the thing is too, and wheel alignment is a really good example, because where the sensors are looking, the radars and the cameras, they're looking down the thrust line of the vehicle. So if you give a vehicle a wheel alignment, particularly a rear toe adjustment, then I've not yet seen a vehicle manufacturer that doesn't state that you must calibrate the camera and radars on the vehicle. So,
well, how many times have we driven behind cars that are driving like that, right? And it's like, please get a thrust wheel alignment, which a lot of workshops sometimes do, but probably could use it as a profit center. And then you kind of go, okay, well, let's just make sure everything that is pointing in the right direction also has been recalibrated and checked.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good example. If you think of that car that's crabbing down the road, and if you imagine that there's cameras and radars that are supposed to be looking down the centre of the road, where are they going to be looking? Yeah. And where that becomes really relevant is particularly something like the long distance radar at the front, which is used predominantly for the autonomous emergency braking and adaptive cruise control. Now, if it's contributing data for the autonomous emergency braking and it's looking in the wrong lane, what do you think might happen when a vehicle is coming towards? It doesn't know necessarily that that vehicle is really in another lane. And actually that leads me to a point where what they're doing now is called fusion, where they're fusing together information from multiple sensors on the vehicle. So now it's unusual that one sensor provides all the information and the solution for the vehicle.
Ah, right.
So the camera
it's like a plan B.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and I guess it's a bit like us. The more information we can absorb, and read and learn, the better the decisions we're going to be able to make.
Yeah. Because
we've got that knowledge. Well, with the motor vehicle, if we think of it the same way, the more information it can get from the environment, from using the different sensors, then the more intelligent the decision that the vehicle makes in a set circumstance.
And Stuart, you touched on at the very beginning about the replacement side of things. And I think in an accident replacement, when you're realigning a car and you're pulling a chassis out and you're doing it as best you possibly can to the closest specifications, because the human hand has touched it, there's always a variance. There's always going to be an issue where that sensor is supposed to be pointing there, but it's 0.1 of a degree like that.
That's all it takes. It's incredibly precise, and the beauty is that there is a solution available or solutions available to be able to get those sensors pointing exactly where they need to be. The vehicle is smart enough with its own control unit and its own algorithms to be able to reset the radar. Once you've got the hardware put in the right place, and I'm digressing and probably jumping ahead of the questions, but you put the target or the reflector cone in the right place, and the control unit will basically do the rest to make sure that it's back to within the OEM specifications. So it's incredibly important that this message starts to get through to anybody that's repairing vehicles, modifying suspension, raising ride height, replacing windscreens. These are all industries that need to be acutely aware of the requirement based on what they're doing to complete the job. Wheel alignment, then followed by ADAS calibration, camera, radar, lidar. Hopefully that message is getting through. So it's important. Clearly, it's important. That's why we're here today. We want this educational piece to really resonate.
And just further to that, if I can, Jason and Stuart, is that we now have the technology available for what we call level 3 ADAS, where the vehicle will actually drive itself.
Okay.
It will accelerate, it will brake, it will steer, it can change lanes by itself. Now, at the moment, that's in really strictly defined circumstances. Generally, it's got to be dual carriageway, no pedestrians, no cyclists, below 60 kilometres an hour. But the vehicle is driving itself. And
you want to make sure it's calibrated correctly.
Absolutely. It would be disastrous if not so. So whilst we don't have that legal in Australia at the moment, it's legal in some places in Europe. As we all know, we follow down. We might be 1 or 2 years later sometimes, but it will be here soon.
That's not a bad thing.
It's not. No, but this is also an opportunity. This is also a revenue stream opportunity for the workshops. As the vehicle car park starts to change, we see more electric vehicles. So the revenue stream for servicing will start to diminish. So we can see ADAS calibration requirements, only going in one direction, and that's up. So for an astute business to invest in the equipment at an appropriate time, it's an additional revenue stream because these systems are only going to increase. Every vehicle being sold, from today, tomorrow, will have 1, 2, 3, 5, 12 radars, cameras, combination of. So they can't take care of themselves. They need external influence to be able to put them back to where they need to be.
And that extra revenue stream, Stuart, I think is a really good point, because whilst at the moment fully electric vehicles are only a minute part of our car park, they've got a minute amount of moving parts compared to the traditional vehicles. So therefore, the income potential for a workshop is dramatically reduced because the service and maintenance and the consumables that a fully electric vehicle uses is way less than a traditional internal combustion engine vehicle. So I think quite rightly, the extra revenue that a workshop can perhaps look to generate to help make up for the... And cars are becoming more reliable today also. So the breakdown repairs generally are going down, not up.
Okay, so Neil, let's go further into the workshop side of things. And I think the revenue side of things is very important for some of our viewers to understand that there is the physical service capacity of a car, but as we change with technology, there's also going to be the digital service technology. And that really seems to be ramping up. And it's kind of cool for the technician as well because they stay cleaner, they stay cooler, but also they have a deep connection to the car through the electronics. What sort of specialised equipment and indeed considerations need to be given in that space for these type of ADAS systems?
Yeah, Jason. So there's probably a few facets to that question. So if I break it down, and if we talk about the equipment needed for calibrations, then there's essentially 2 ways to calibrate these sensors on the vehicles, and this is dictated by the motor vehicle manufacturer and the system providers. It's not something generally we can pick and choose how we're going to calibrate. The few vehicles you can, but there's a dynamic calibration process where with a suitable diagnostic tool, like one of our Megamax range, all our Megamax diagnostic tools are capable of doing calibrations on vehicles. So you basically tell the vehicle that you want to calibrate, for example, a front radar, and you go through a drive cycle. The tool will tell you what conditions you need to meet during that drive cycle. And it might be things like, for example, drive at least 60 kilometres an hour. Sometimes it might say 60 to 70 metres from the preceding vehicle in front of you. And you'll drive and the radar will orientate itself. The software and the algorithms will work out exactly where everything is and calibrate. And with a windscreen camera, for example, it's a similar scenario. You tell the vehicle that you want to calibrate the windscreen camera through the diagnostic tool and you go for a drive. It will look at things like the traffic signs, the white lines on the road, perhaps pedestrians, perhaps cyclists, and normally 15 to 20 minutes maximum. If the environmental conditions are right, then the dynamic calibration will go through. Now, it's no good trying to calibrate dynamically a windscreen camera at night, for example. Of course. Or if it's really, really foggy or pouring down rain, it won't work.
Okay.
So that leads me to the second type of calibration process, which is a static calibration.
Right. So you've got the option of the two.
Well, as I said earlier, some vehicles dictate it must be dynamic or it must be static. Some vehicles, you do a static calibration first and then it's followed up by a dynamic.
Okay.
So to fine-tune it, perhaps is one way of putting it. And as I mentioned, some vehicles you do have a choice whether it's a static or dynamic calibration. A static calibration is where we're putting a defined target. So for a camera, that'll be a graphical symbol in a precise location. And the diagnostic tool will tell you exactly where that needs to be. So,
It sounds like it's reading a barcode.
it's probably not a bad way of putting it, Jason. Yeah. But the barcode has to be exactly the right distance.
Yeah.
It's got to be the right height. And it's also got to be parallel with the rear axle as
It's like
well.
I'm scanning something at the shops, but it sounds like that, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's a really good analogy because I suppose if you held your phone on too much of an angle, it's not going to recognise.
Yeah. So it sets the car base up, for want of a better reason, but it allows the workshop to facilitate that, charge for that, because it's a very specialised service, and deliver it back and say, and I'm thinking of the person who says, oh, a dog ran out and it didn't do anything, and I thought the car's supposed to do that, and the service manager says, oh, I'll recalibrate it for you.
Yeah, perhaps. And
there's the revenue stream.
Absolutely. So, if the vehicle manufacturer recommends or indeed states that a calibration must be performed after certain service tasks are performed on the vehicle, the workshop then really has no choice but to make sure those calibrations are done. And I guess I've got two choices. They can outsource it, or they can decide to invest in the equipment
and do it internally.
Yeah. If they outsource it, there's a few considerations. The time it's going to take. So, how far away are they from a dealership or an outside calibration service that can come and do the job for them? And now some insurance companies won't let the car be driven.
I was about to say that.
If the calibration hasn't been done. So then there's the logistical issues and cost of putting it on a tow truck to get it somewhere. So there's cost, there's the logistics, there's probably equally importantly for the customer, the vehicle owner, the extra time that's going to take.
Yeah, and for a workshop, you've got to relinquish your responsibility of looking after the car to a third party.
Correct.
When realistically, if you're open to learning how to calibrate and do that in-house, digital items with consumers is instant. They expect instant.
Yeah.
Like, why do you have to send my car out? Why can't you just do it here? So as you diminish the physical servicing, this is starting to fill the hole as your workshop evolves.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're quite right when you say we want everything instantly today. So, how is your customer going to feel when you say, well, I've finished the repair on your vehicle, but unfortunately it's going to be 2 weeks before I can get it booked in to do the calibration. So really,
insurance companies wouldn't like that.
No. Absolutely not. And I think, one of the questions we get asked, probably one of the first questions, how much is this equipment going to cost? And perhaps now is a good opportunity to talk about that.
Yeah.
So you need a diagnostic tool that's capable of doing calibrations. Now, again, our Megamax range are all capable of that, but our Megamax X is also DOIP and CAN FD compatible.
Right, okay.
So another consideration, without trying to go too wide here, Jason, but another consideration is the newer vehicles and the communication protocols that they're using, DOIP, Diagnostics over Internet Protocol. So you need to make sure your diagnostic tool can talk to those vehicles.
Yes.
And if a workshop just wants to start off doing dynamic calibrations for those vehicles with that diagnostic tool, they could probably do today maybe 10 or 15% of the vehicles on the road.
Probably no more than 20%, Neil.
Yeah.
So, vehicles like BMW, Ford, Rolls-Royce use dynamic, but most of our mainstream brands, Toyota, Mazda, are static. So you need that, that predefined target.
Yeah.
Hyundai are a combination of both, aren't they?
Yes.
So they use both static and dynamic, but most of our mainstream models, common models in Australia, are static, which is great because it's a much safer method of calibrating and more accurate in our minds.
Absolutely.
It's a very interesting conversation because, when you look at vehicles, especially from a workshop point of view, you're looking at the revenue that you can generate from the service of a vehicle, and you're opening up a new servicing aspect to a car. Now, some workshops may take it on board. They'll do ECU resets, they'll do sensor resets on other parts of the car. But as we move away from the guy who used to service the transmission, who was the transmission specialist in the workshop, the thought of having somebody walking towards you dressed like this saying, I want to give you an update on the safety aspect of your car and what we've done for you today. The level of engagement that that's offering is something almost some workshops have never ever had the ability to offer before. Having that specialist, almost IT specialist, talking to the customers. This is what I've done for you. This is what I found. This is what we rectified. The peace of mind of that is through the roof.
Key point, isn't it? So
Yeah.
peace of mind, safety, confidence. Confidence. You want to retain your customers, of course. They're not easy to get at the best of times. So you want to be able to provide that complete bumper to bumper service for them and reassure them that you know what you're doing with the technology, whether it is ADAS, whether it's EV, that you've invested, you've kept up to date with the knowledge, vehicle specific, which is not easy, but you're on the right pathway. And this is what workshops need to be, if they're not already, considering, where are they going? What can they do to retain their customers? Do they know about ADAS? What are they doing about ADAS today? Are they outsourcing it? Are they ignoring it? There's a whole piece to it, and comes back to consumer confidence and safety. We all want everybody, again, 0 fatalities. This is the end game. This is why the systems are there. We're working on that pathway. So it's exactly why we're here today.
Yeah, and look, I think too, Stuart, for a workshop, because when we're talking about these calibrations, the environment in the workshop does need to be suitable. So, and some workshops may well be too small. The floor might be really sloped for drainage reasons and things like that. So, we've had quite a few customers who've invested and they've built either another workshop, or they've moved, or they've added on to their workshop. So if a workshop is thinking they're outgrowing their current building and location, one thing I'd suggest that they really may well be worth considering if they're thinking about updating their workshop is thinking about, okay, what would I need to consider if I want to do calibrations and static calibrations in my new workshop? So that might be something, it's only going to be a small percentage.
It's definitely not for everybody. It's not for everybody. But
a final word on this would be, you'd hate to have a local workshop, but actually have to send it to a different local workshop to get it calibrated. You kind of almost, can you afford to not invest in this technology and at least understanding of it? Because I'd hate to think you had to go and send it to your opposition to get something done.
Yeah.
That's a great final word.
So Neil, I just want to take you back and talk about static calibrations. What's specifically needed in that department for a workshop looking at this sort of upgrade?
Okay, so there's a few things, Jason. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, for a camera, the target is going to be a graphic symbol. But of course, we need something to hold that graphic symbol in the right place. So we have what we call our CSC tool, which is Camera Sensor Calibration Tool. Essentially, it's a stand that you can mount the target, as we call it, onto, and then position it precisely as per the Megamax device instructions on where that target needs to be.
Oh, okay.
So for a rear view camera, it will be generally, again, a graphic symbol, which will be a mat that's placed on the floor behind the vehicle. For all-round vision, or bird's eye vision, as it's often referred to, generally there'll be mats that will go all the way around the vehicle.
Right.
Specified graphic by the vehicle manufacturer. Again, the Megamax tool will tell the technicians exactly where to put those, A, which target to use, which graphic symbol to use, and B, precisely where to put them. So then if we move to radar, so there's a couple of different radar targets for a lot of the European forward-facing radar sensors. There's a radar plate, which is basically a flat metal plate that, again, you put at a precise location in relation to the radar, both distance and height. And again, the diagnostic tool tells you exactly where to put that. And on this radar plate, it actually will go into 3 different angles, and that's to allow for when the vehicle's braking, for the squat, for the pitch up when it's accelerating, and for unaccelerated travel. So again, the tool will tell you.
These are all able to be positioned. The targets are all able to be positioned in different places.
For the radar plate, it's in the one place, but then on ours, it's basically got a knob on it that'll turn and it will easily change to the three different angles. So it's really, really simple. So you're not moving the target and having to set it up again when you're doing that calibration.
Because I'm thinking if somebody had a lifted full drive, for argument's sake, or some specific need to put a heavy-duty suspension in or whatever, and it adjusted the height of the vehicle, that recalibration is important to maintain the safety of that vehicle.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then probably the other type of radar target is a trihedral. It's generally it's a metal cone that you will place again in a precise location. So for the front-facing radar, in front of the vehicle, generally in the centre, and for the blind spot or the lane change assist radars in the back corners, although now these radar units are being fitted to the front corners as well, and you would position that cone in precisely the right location. You then, whatever the target is, once you've positioned it exactly where it should be, then through the diagnostic tool, you tell the relevant ECU in the vehicle that target is where it expects to see it. So make any software adjustments you need to calibrate.
It actually is pretty straightforward, but if you've got the right equipment and it sounds like, okay, we're going to do this calibration, bang, 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 lay it all out, go through the process, set the car up back to factory specs. You know, we talk a quick game here, but I'm thinking in the workshop, kind of makes sense, doesn't it? You know, to have that ability to go, right, well, it's raining, it's pouring outside, we'll do the static calibration.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as we've mentioned, it's a great revenue stream. And, you know, maybe what we were just talking about then to someone that's not doing calibrations, that might all sound a little bit hard to understand, and it might sound a little bit difficult. But as you said, it's not difficult. It's a matter of just precisely placing a target according to a really clear set of instructions. And the other thing is probably worth mentioning, when our territory managers commission any of our CSC tools and the diagnostic tools at the customer's workshop, they also train them as well.
Oh, they do on-site training.
Yeah, so that's included because, you know, the last thing we'd want to do is just drop the equipment and
good luck.
Say good luck, you know, that.
Well, it's interesting. Sorry, just to cut off. It's interesting. We're coming up to winter because workshops will always focus on tyres. Coming up to winter, they're always a great seller. Tyres and an ADAS recalibration leading into winter, with the most amount of weather and everything like that, kind of goes hand in hand, doesn't it?
Look, it does. It does. It's, you know, probably not an easy sell to talk to a customer about. But if there's any new tyres, and if obviously wheel alignment is then performed, and if adjustments are made to, you know, to tow front or rear, then you know, the OEM stipulate that, you know, front camera and or front radar calibration is required. So
this stuff's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer.
When you get your head around it and you think about what you're offering your clients, and indeed the product you guys are producing and putting into vehicles, use it to your advantage in the workshop and for your client.
That's how we see it.
So Neil, with the ADAS calibration, what sort of time frame does it take on a vehicle? You know, what is a workshop looking at from that side of things?
How long is a piece of string?
Yeah, that's a good answer.
No, look, it does depend. So I think I mentioned earlier, dynamic calibration. The drive typically takes 15 to 20 minutes. For a static calibration, it does depend a little bit on what sensor that we're calibrating.
Okay.
So if it's a windscreen camera, normally 20 minutes to drive the vehicle in, set the vehicle up, position the target, do the calibration. I should add, and it doesn't matter whether it's a dynamic or a static calibration, what we really highly recommend and urge all of the workshops to do is to do a pre-scan on the vehicle before they do the calibration and then a pre-scan afterwards as well. But that doesn't take a long time. So about 20 minutes, as I said, for a windscreen camera. Radars can take a little bit longer. So a radar calibration can go anywhere from, some you can do in 20 minutes. Others, if we look at some of the Audis that have twin front radars, where you need to calibrate both, and it's a manual adjustment that you do.
Yeah.
That can take maybe an hour.
Okay.
Rear radars, we're using either the Doppler or the reflector cone, around about 30 minutes.
I'm hearing the times that fall in line with brake pads change, rotor change, tyre wheel and balance, rotate. Very similar times.
Yeah.
Very similar times. So it's interesting that you're not saying, 4 hours. You know, you are actually now in line with what workshops are offering already. In blocks of hour, in 15-minute blocks. Okay, so Stuart, Heller Gutmann Solutions, the equipment. I know it's unique, but what actually makes it wear that unique tag?
Yeah. So, Jason, simply put, we're ADAS specialists. That's what we do. It's what we're known for. That's how we've positioned our business, specifically here in Australia. But if you link it to our parent company, Heller, all your viewers will be familiar with the brand. You know, we're global suppliers of lighting, electronic components, radars. You know, we make millions of radars every year fitted to Mazdas and BMWs and Volkswagens. So, you know, we have that competence. So we've taken that, you know, OE competence as a manufacturer and tier one supplier to the car companies, and we've developed a really clever aftermarket solution that is relatively simple to use, and packaged all that up into becoming what we're known as those ADAS specialists for the for the industry.
Yeah, well, the unique side of things in product development and support always go hand in hand with evolution. And you know, the parent company Heller, I remember when they went from sealed beams to then you can put your bulb inside it. And now you're going to prism beams and all those sort of things. It never stops, but that's what makes it unique.
Correct. So technology is I think running at a pace now that's possibly never been seen since the introduction of the motor vehicle some 120 odd years ago. So, you know, Heller are working with the car companies to come up with these solutions, again, partly being driven by government and lawmakers. And, you know, a big part of our business today is the aftermarket. So we need to have, you know, really easy to use, somewhat cost effective solutions available for the aftermarket.
Maybe that's what makes it so unique, that it is cost effective, it is easy to use, it's not hard. And in a world of other products that are very hard to understand, this sounds very user friendly.
And to add to that, we've got this a function built into our MegaMax diagnostic tool based around navigating around the security firewalls.
Oh, of course.
That the OEMs are
that's a hot topic at the moment.
It's a really hot topic. So, you know, you can imagine that the car companies are doing, you know, investing a lot of money to try and keep the aftermarket locked out of their vehicle. Thankfully, regulators in Europe in particular are working to ensure that doesn't happen.
We haven't had a data breach on cars yet, have we?
No, we haven't.
That's actually good news, though, isn't it?
Yep. So no, these firewalls are incredibly safe.
And you're part of that?
Effective. We are. We're absolutely part of that. But we also have to have a solution that can allow our diagnostic tool to be able to communicate, you know, with the control units, and then to be able to fulfill the calibration.
That just blows my mind, and exciting at the same time, but probably a whole separate conversation for us to have.
It is. Look, and I think finally the last unique part is the competence that we have, particularly here in Australia. We have a team that are dedicated purely to supporting our customers around diagnostic tools and, more importantly, around ADAS calibration. So face-to-face training, followed up by a technical hotline. You know, we are the partner for all things ADAS. Linked back to our parent company, who are still developing, you know, the next best radar and software that drives that. So, you know, we believe, you know, we are the one-stop shop for all things ADAS in Australia.
All right, Neil, let's talk myths and misconceptions of ADAS. What are they?
Okay, there's a few, Jason, but just really quickly, I suppose the biggest one that we still see today is a workshop or a technician saying, well, there's no warning lights on the dash to tell me that I need to do a calibration on the vehicle. And that really can be a big mistake.
Right.
Rarely will there be a warning light to say that the vehicle needs a calibration. There might be a warning light on the dash saying that the system's inoperative, but that doesn't mean it's inoperative because it needs a calibration.
Oh, okay.
So that's probably the first and the biggest one. No warning lights. I can just let the car go, and that may well not be the case. And I think the other one is that I didn't work on the ADAS on the vehicle. I didn't touch a radar. I didn't I didn't change the windscreen, for example, which would mean the camera needs calibrating. I didn't do any of that, so therefore I don't need to worry about a calibration.
Okay.
But if they changed the suspension geometry on the vehicle, they gave it a wheel alignment, if they changed the steering angle sensor or calibrated the steering angle sensor, more than likely calibration of cameras and radars will need to be done.
Okay.
So I think, just to summarise the question, there are quite a few myths, but what's really imperative for a workshop today is to have information. And whether that be the service and repair information from the respective vehicle manufacturers, or the service and repair information that you can get through our diagnostic tools, or sometimes maybe a combination of both is required. But information is gold.
So Stuart, the ADAS calibration, is this going to become a growing feature in the market?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as we touched on earlier, there's more and more sensors being installed on vehicles. You know, even your base model vehicles now will generally have a radar and a front camera. So these are only going to be on the increase when you consider there's 85 million passenger and light commercial vehicles manufactured every year. There's 85 million front cameras, probably 300 million radars, and that's all relevant for our car park as well. So this requirement is going in one direction only, so that the opportunity to be able to provide a calibration service is going one way only, and that's up.
And in a workshop capacity, as this grows, technician training, that's important as well.
Yeah, this is one of the key benefits of our solution. So with the training we provide, you don't need to be a master technician. So you don't even need to be a qualified technician, although, having said, there are some state rules and regulations that need to be adhered to.
Yeah.
But you don't need a special set of skills to be able to provide, to be able to set up the calibration equipment. Obviously, you need a driver's license to be able to do the dynamic calibration. But to do the static calibration, you just need to follow the very clear set of instructions. We provide the full training on how you do that and using the laser and the measuring tools that we provide. It's just a case of following the rules, following the instructions step by step by step, put everything in the right place, hit go on the diagnostic tool, and that's it. It's as simple as that.
You can see my wheels turning. I'm thinking about the new technician members in the team, the workshop dynamic, what it looks like, the older generation technicians, the younger generation technicians. And the younger generation technicians would be all over this. They would love this. And the ability to give that sort of IT servicing to the newer, younger guys and girls that are coming through makes them an asset to the team, doesn't it?
What a draw card. What a draw card for a workshop that's invested in the equipment to attract talent by saying, hey, guess what? We don't just drain oil out of vehicles and change brake pads. We do ADAS calibrations. We've got diagnostic tools. We've got specialist equipment. How cool is that? Because the younger generation can relate to this.
Yeah.
So I think it's an awesome way of attracting and retaining staff. Another subject for another day, obviously, but clearly we've touched on the revenue stream. We've touched on the fact that you don't need a specific set of skills. A first-year apprentice, second-year apprentice, more than capable of learning, taking on what we teach them and how to do it, and they'd be all over it. They'd love it.
And a technician that maybe isn't as physical mobile as they used to be, the older technicians taking on board those sort of roles, understanding them and having this senior technician stand in front of a client who they've seen for 3 generations of cars already, giving that, this is massive in regards to engagement.
That's a really good point. Yeah. So this is something where, age doesn't discriminate, having that knowledge within the business spread across your whole team, because again, it's not rocket science. We've spoken about it. It's relatively simple. And it's both theory and in its practice to go through the various calibration types. So it's, again, for us, it's a no-brainer as we sit and talk about it now.
So Neil, we talked about some of the myths of the ADAS system. What are some of the drawbacks? What are some of the reasons why workshops are maybe a bit hesitant on these systems?
Yeah, well, there's a few that we've heard, Jason, and I think most of them are also myths as well.
Oh, right, okay.
But certainly there's considerations, and we spoke a little about the workshop needs to be suitable, level floor, good lighting, size. So that is certainly a consideration. But if the workshop owner isn't certain whether their place would be suitable, then they can certainly contact us and we can come out and do a site assessment and make recommendations on what we think can be done, and perhaps maybe what can't be done. So that's one of the reasons. The capital investment required is another, and it's quite a serious concern. You know, especially with what a lot of industries have gone through recently in the last couple of years. So money can still be a little bit tight, but one of the advantages of our system is it's modular. So as we mentioned, there's dynamic and static calibrations. You could start off just with their diagnostic tool and do dynamic. If you wanted then just to do front camera calibrations, purchase the CSC tool and only the targets, those graphic symbols I spoke about earlier.
It doesn't have to be all in.
No. You don't have to go all in. It's not all or nothing.
Yeah.
It can be piece by piece.
And allow it to grow in your business.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You can build your competence in line with that as well. So your comfort factor to be able to talk to customers and introduce, you know, we now do front camera. This is why we do it. So there's an opportunity for the workshop to build their competence and their marketing spiel in line with the equipment and the investment.
Really, if there's any technicians, any workshop owners that aren't really certain, would like more information, would like us to come out and do an assessment of their site, no problems. All they need to do is contact us. They can contact us by email. You can see the email address here, by phone. You can see the phone number, and we'd be more than happy to talk to them and address any concerns that they may have.
Fantastic. So the ADAS system is an interesting one to me, and I must admit, as your host today, I did a bit of research before I knew I was going to have you guys in front of me. And I can't help but think, going back to things like the planes you flew in on and all of those assistant systems for the pilots. My son has a 2009 Lexus IS250 with a cruise control radar that was fantastic. He loves it and so forth. You know, and as we move forward, I'm really keen to hear, you know, your thoughts on the forward-facing side of things of your business with your YouTube channel, because I've been there. I'd like to hear from you guys. What have you got there? And your territory managers, what can you offer people who want to learn more?
We've really tried to make this information widely available. As you can see, as we've covered off today, this is as much about education as it is about selling equipment. So we want to be, you know, part of that education process right through the automotive repair industry. So we've developed, Neil's developed, a number of short videos that really dumb down the process of, you know, what's involved in a front camera calibration, a front radar calibration, a rear radar calibration. They're about 4 or 5 minutes long, and it shows exactly what you need to do. It shows you the equipment that's required. It shows you the setup process. It will just remove any clouds or uncertainty that you may have around, can I do this? Is this for me? You know, and it just supplements talking to us as well. You'll be more informed if you go there first, but you know, if you don't have the time, then come straight to us.
I went to your YouTube channel. I went down the rabbit hole, and it was fantastic. And all the while, whilst I'm learning, it's some fantastic videos. And I'd say to anybody watching, please go and have a look. I go back to the plane. I'm thinking, how do you calibrate a plane? How do you do this? It really starts to get the wheels turning, thinking what is going to be the benefit. But you obviously have a lot of fun making the YouTube channel, and you're very passionate about what you do and so forth. But you also have territory managers that will also go out and spend time doing this as well. Is that right?
Absolutely, Jason. So around the country, we have our territory managers, and they're really enthusiastic. We're really lucky with the bunch of people that we have in the team. So again, if you're in New South Wales or Queensland, you know, don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we can get someone to you to discuss any of your concerns, to alleviate any of your concerns, and as I mentioned earlier, to have a look at your workshop and see if it's suitable. But the guys are really, really passionate about the industry as well. So it's a great mix, a great team. And Stuart mentioned it, you know, a really important part of what we do is educating the industry. You know, we're here for the long term. We want the industry to be here for a long term as well. And any little thing we can do to help that, then we're more than happy to do.
And part of that site assessment is talking about what sort of vehicles you're working on. You know, maybe you just work on Volkswagens and Audis. In that case, you need, you know, this much equipment, or you may be a generalist. You work on everything, and you need this much equipment. So modular, Neil touched on it. So we want to provide the very best solution for exactly what the needs are of the workshop. It's not you need this and you use half of it. We will provide you, we will guide you on exactly what you would need. We can walk you through it. It's modular, so you can start with this and end with that. It's about, supporting the workshop's desire to grow, add revenue stream, retain their customer base, attract new customers, and be part of the journey on ADAS and then, electric vehicles and so forth that all come hand in hand, don't they?
Well, guys, it has been a fantastic journey. Having you in here, it's been a very exciting podcast with Evolve TV today. Stuart, Neil, thanks for coming in, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have.
Been a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks for the opportunity.
For everyone watching at home, we hope you've got a lot of value from this episode of Evolve TV. If you have any comments or questions about what we've discussed here today, go ahead and visit the Evolve Hub community to continue the conversation, and we look forward to seeing you for the next episode of Evolve TV.